Hey, Anna, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hi, great to be here.
Let's go into the rapid fire. What is the one myth or misconception about lobbying?
Wow. I think that the one of the biggest myths is that things can happen quickly. Nothing happens quickly. And I learned that very, very quickly. I did learn that quickly that it takes a lot of time. But most good things do take time.
What would you be if you weren't a lobbyist?
Hmm. Wow, I think I would have been an attorney,
Oh,
which is similar, right? A lot of attorneys are lobbyists, so actually it's kind of the same field. But really, I'm so passionate about helping people, but my helping people usually requires uh, getting involved in either the legal aspect of things or the political aspect of things to make real changes that can impact people for the rest of their life.
what three skills you think are essential for someone to be a good lobbyist?
Mm. I think being able to build relationships is really, I would put that as the most important thing because that's how you actually can get things done is having relationships where um, you know who to go to and you're able to lean on, whether that's a politician or whether that's another lobbyist or someone in the community or stakeholder. I think trust is also a big piece to that, because for me, the relationships that really were able to help and have been able to help me get things done were because when I'm bringing, issues or bringing, things to the table, they were relevant, and the individuals I was working with, they knew that from the trust that we built through a relationship. I think perseverance is huge because again, these are not things that happen quickly when you're talking about legislation, whether on the state or on the federal level. These are things that you really have to have perseverance to behind. You can't give up after you've been told no, even if you've been told no 100 times. If you really believe it's the right thing, you can't give up. You have to keep persevering. And then I think the third thing would be willingness to compromise. And it's not compromising your values or your beliefs, it's compromising to ensure that you can actually get things done. You can always make changes. And I learned that the hard way. But you can always make changes, but you have to be willing to make some compromises to get things done.
What inspires or motivates you to be doing what you're doing?
Hmm. For me, I grew up in a house where everyone was very active in our community. And my dad was a small business owner and was always and an entrepreneur. So always, doing things for other people and doing things that would build our community. And so I had that instilled in me. My mom always jokes my favorite book was The Lorax, which ironically is a very political book. But Dr. Seuss's book, The Lorax, was my favorite book as a child. But for me, really what changed the trajectory of what I was doing in my life was when my daughter was diagnosed with autism. And we learned that the treatment that we wanted to choose for her and that was evidence-based and really had great outcomes was not covered, not just for our daughter. It was not covered for any children in the state of Georgia where we lived. And then I learned that that was true for many other states across the United States. And so for me, I felt like that there had to be something done about that. there had to be a change. We could not continue to accept in our society that children with autism should not have equal access to meaningful health care. And so that really changed everything for me.
That's truly inspiring. What is your favorite destination spot?
Oh, this may be funny for you, okay? Because my favorite destination spot is actually, I'm a huge Disney fan, which I have my Mickey behind me. Actually, my daughter drew the picture that you could see. She's very talented. And I don't know if that's because the work I do is so serious. And so you can go to Disney World and kind of live in the magic for a few days. But I love it. I love to take my kids, and my daughter Ava, who does have autism, she also loves it as well. And so we have a blast.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite place too. I've been there at least 5 times now, but yeah, I
Yes.
can never get tired of it.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you would like to share, which any of my listeners probably would not know about you?
Um, hmm. Well, I think probably it's not the one thing I would like to share, but it's probably the question that you asked me earlier, right? So I'm happy to answer that, because we live in a society in many ways where, you know, there is a lot of stigma and expectation on where you go to school and how you look and the brand of your clothes and the car that you drive. And so I think in a lot of ways I have broken those molds, but not even on purpose. So I had planned to go to college, and actually I thought, well, I'm going to, you know, likely go to college to be an attorney, or political science, like something in that area. And I also wanted a family. So I was trying to kind of juggle all that. My husband was in college, and I started taking a few classes, and Ava was diagnosed. And she's my middle child. So I had one child that was 2 years old, and then Ava was diagnosed. And there was no time. I had to sink in and basically devote every minute of every day to supporting her progress and helping her and learning how to be a parent to a child with autism and still being a parent to my other child. And the incredible thing was, before that, I had worked with my dad and done a lot of business development with all of his businesses, and had all this great experience learning how to build relationships with people and learning how to really develop things that I do. And then ran for Senate and became a state senator in Georgia. And I actually worked with him for years, supporting him locally and doing lots of things. So it's interesting how a lot of parts of my life prepared me that I didn't even know I need preparing in. And so I've worked my way up, and I would just say, learning as I go, learning from incredible people. And at this point, I feel like all the things that I've done have likely prepared me more than any degree could have ever prepared me for. So I'm the girl who now is a VP and working in, you know, a company and doing things that I think really are impacting the world. And I'm so grateful to do that. And I don't have a degree. So that's my fun surprise, I guess, probably shocking to people. And people, I've thought about getting a degree, but at this point in my life, so many people said, Anna, really, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Or, because what would you do that just to make yourself feel better that so like at this point in my life, I'm just going to keep going.
I love it. What is your favorite book or hobby?
Oh, Well, my favorite hobby is, being with my kids. I love being with my kids. They're older now, and so we have so much fun doing things, traveling. We love to travel. So we are hoping now that travel restrictions have lifted to go overseas. And so, that's something that I just love to do. And that's kind of my hobby and my favorite thing to do, kind of wrapped all in one.
That's awesome. So with that, let's jump a little bit into your past. Can you tell us a little bit about where did you grow up and how was your childhood like? And were there any, you did tell us about, you were interested in your favorite book, which was a political one, but were there any other glimpses that you were inclined towards politics?
Um, I would say yes. So much of my life as a child. So I come from a family of four, but we live in a very small town of really less than 20,000 people. And with, that's in our whole county. So, I say town, not city. So that's how you know that it's very small. And I grew up here my whole life. But my family did a lot of traveling. So as a young child, I saw a lot of the world, and in many ways, a lot of impoverished areas that we would travel to. And we did service projects at these locations, and then we would spend time, there as a family. And so it was a unique way to grow up being from a small town, but then experiencing culture in such a large way. And what that did was give me a really, I guess, opened my eyes and made me a very compassionate person, and a person who really wanted to ensure that people had someone that would fight for them if they needed that. And so I worked within my community. I wrote grants for us, and was able to get millions of dollars in funding for children who needed after school care and things like that. And so I would say my childhood really, the contribution was that it shaped me in being a person who really learned to always ask questions and really never accept no, and really always question things and be able to say, could that be done better? Or these, this school needs this. And if it was a no, well, I'm sure there has to be a way to get it. And that's really what I was told about the grant. I was told, your community will never get this grant. It just won't. It was an $8 million grant. And I wrote the grant, and we got it. And so that really shaped all of these experiences, and, really helped shape who I am and the passion that I have to help other people. But really the focus of my passion is to help people that really, I feel like, struggle to have a voice. And whether that's, the disability community, whether that's underprivileged children, whether that's on healthcare issues, where we see so much, especially individuals who live in rural areas where healthcare is much different than what people might experience, in a larger city.
And did you grow up in Georgia?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I see. Okay, which city and what was the town name?
Yeah, so I grew up in Lyons, Georgia. So it's a very small community. Our neighboring town is Vidalia, Georgia, where the famous onions are from. But I grew up in a small town next to that called Lyons. Grew up here my whole life. My family is from here, and my grandparents are from here. So yeah.
That's awesome. And the grant which you got for your community, how old were you, if you don't mind me asking you?
No, I would have been, so let me think about that. That was 2011 that we initially got that grant. So I was in my early 30s till late 20s. So it's okay if yes. So I'm actually going to be 40 this year, which I'm pretty excited about. Okay, I'm not going to be scared of 40. I feel pretty excited about 40. I would much rather be turning 40 than 20. I can just say that. I do not want to be 20 again. So I think I was in my late 20s when I wrote that grant. Yeah.
Okay. So so you went to high school, and at any point did you think that you you would be getting into like government relations or like politics or anything at that point? Because I see after that, I see you were an executive director at Toombs Family Connection. So can you tell us, like, connect the dots in between these two, and at what point did you feel like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do?
So I mean, even when I was in high school, and honestly, it really, kind of describing my love for, the Lorax. For me, I was always passionate in a very young age about, and helping doesn't really describe what it would be, really fighting for other people, fighting for what was right for other people. And so, I was the teenager who would go talk to the teacher for you, or help you go talk to the teacher if you unfairly were given a grade that you should not have been, or you were not allowed, or you somehow didn't get to participate. I wanted to help make sure that, someone who could make a change knew that they needed to do that. And sometimes, probably really naively, I probably, it wasn't always the right thing to do or done the right way. But when I graduated high school, that was, I really thought, well, I want to go and do some mission work, and really go overseas and stay for maybe a couple of years. And so that was one of the things I thought about doing, but I was already involved with my uncle in many ways, and my dad in building his business, and learning from him. And, that also gave me a really important perspective on really, I would say, the financial, a financial perspective, and really just taxes, healthcare, everything that went into running a business, that I realized, wow, this is actually really hard. And then my uncle being a senator and having his perspective, and always listening and being a part, and, helping him where I could, hearing what was actually going on and how legislation was affecting people on a day-to-day basis was fascinating to me. Being able to put those two worlds together, seeing my dad trying to run a business and do well for his employees and the community, and then my uncle on this side of making policy that was literally affecting all of that and affecting education. And so, that was something that I really knew I wanted to be involved in, and I wasn't sure how. So that's kind of, the background into that. The executive director position was very intriguing to me, because it was a position where I was responsible to assist on a multi-county basis the collaboration of services. That was Medicaid, mental health services, school services, any type of support or resource that we could collaborate and bring to our communities that were underserved. That was our job. And so I got to interact with a lot of families and a lot of stakeholders that, again, gave me such a great perspective into the day-to-day life of people, and how all the policies that the federal government and the state government are passing or not passing impact people on their day-to-day life. So I will say, it possibly, it's always in the back of my mind. At some point in my life, maybe I would run for public office, right? I mean, maybe it's, working at the level that I do, on the lobbying level, I feel like I can get a lot done strategically. And I feel like I have the voice of so many people to bring. I do think it's hard to make a difference as a politician now. I think it's very, very challenging. So I would never want to be stuck in a position where I felt like I couldn't make a difference.
Interesting. So, so as the executive director, and was that the first time you stepped foot at the General Assembly? Is that when it happened, or was it happen even before that, that you already knew
No,
that, okay, this is the piece you want to work on?
yeah, so that job did bring me to the Capitol. And a lot of what we did, we were not lobbyists actually in that position. There were other individuals, in different parts of the state. We were not lobbyists, but it was our job to ensure that we were working closely with state officials and directors, whether it was a director of Medicaid or director of Department of Behavioral Health, in ensuring that the needs of the communities were expressed and presented. Really when I started getting very involved at the Capitol was when Ava was diagnosed, and I started going there to try to pass legislation, which I'd never done. And it seemed, it seemed such a huge lift for someone who was not an attorney or not, but my uncle really did help me and trained me and mentored me, and I would never shy away now of trying to pass legislation anywhere else. And I'm working on several different states on legislation in those states. And because to that, that experience really was life-changing for me.
And when was this? Which year?
So that was we started in 2008. Yeah, in
Okay.
2008.
Okay, so 2008. And would you say, like, if someone was listening to this and they are wondering as to how they can get their feet wet in passing legislation or getting into like the lobbying world, what would you recommend them they do?
I think it's so important that individuals who are not politicians and not lobbyists are at our state capitals and are in DC trying to pass meaningful legislation, because they're the ones that are going to bring the real experience and the real information and knowledge that's needed to ensure legislation is in fact meaningful and it's not just a piece of paper, right? And so I would say if someone wants to get involved in that, no matter what the issue is, the first thing you have to do is know what you want. Know exactly what you want. For me, I wanted children who were diagnosed with autism to have access to evidence-based treatment, that insurance companies could not deny them coverage. And so that was a pretty black and white, right? And so there might be other issues. Like when I was at the Capitol, another very controversial issue that was going on was there were a lot of parents who were working to get medical marijuana as where it would be legal for them to have it in the state of Georgia for individuals with certain diagnoses. For them, it was their children who were having seizures. And thankfully that bill did pass also, because it was very meaningful to so many people. So if you want to start, you have to really know what your ask is, know what you want to get done. And then you have to find, in the political world, it's called a sponsor. For me, I call them a champion. And that's the person who is either a senator or a House member that will carry the bill for you. And you have to have someone, and so that you need a champion that will carry your bill and help you through all the landscape and everything that is going to happen.
And looking at your career progression, you've been like the director at the community outreach and advocacy, and then you are the program director at the Toombs County. So can you summarize those brief areas of, you being out there. Can you tell us, like, what kind of skills did you gain which helped you in your current position?
Yes. So for me, every position that I had, I would find someone that knew more than me, that was really good at what they were doing. And I would ask that person to mentor me and teach me everything they know. Um, and whether that was how to write a grant, whether that was how to run statistical analysis, whether that was how to do research on a needs or using a needs assessment, drafting policy. It didn't matter. Whatever that was that I knew that they could do really well, I found those people. So in some cases, that was also a lobbyist. So if there was a lobbyist that I could lean on, that could help me, that I knew was really good at relationships, I would get with them, show me. I would just spend time with them. And that really is how I've been able to grow in my career, is not feeling like, well, I don't know that, I can't do it. It's, I don't know that, let me find the person who does that the best. And let me spend so much time with them and watch them and listen so that I can do that. And that's really how I grew.
That's amazing. And then I see that you were also the Vice President, Government Relations and Biz Dev at Chance Light Behavioral Health. Can you tell us, like, how did you, and maybe you should like enlighten me in terms of the stuff which you've been working on prior to working on behavioral health and like you maybe transitioning into this. Can you tell us, like, what was it, the difference, and, how did you move into this side of the world?
Right. So I was working at Toombs County Family Connection, and that position was very broad. So it was not just a healthcare position, and it was a position where I was supporting community engagement on a very, very diverse level. And when I started working on Ava's Law in 2008, you have to be careful when you're working for the state government. You can't lobby. There's laws around lobbying when you're, working in certain positions and things. So I was actually going to the Capitol on my own time. It's a 3-hour drive for me. So I was driving there, 3 hours there, 3 hours home a lot of days. So I didn't have to stay in a hotel because I couldn't really afford to stay in a hotel anyway. And my kids were at home. So I was like, so I would just drive up there, spend the day lobbying for Ava's Law, and then I would drive home. And I really started developing relationships with families, and I started working with a woman named Judith Yersetti, who worked for Autism Speaks. And she is one of those people who was a mentor for me. She had gotten into the field like me because her son was diagnosed with autism. And she taught me so much. And Autism Speaks hired a lobbyist, and we all started working together. And I started learning a lot about policy, about government relations, about, what it took to really pass legislation and make a meaningful impact. And then I started learning about insurance, and started working with people who worked for insurance companies. And so Chance Light was a company at the time that was an education-based company, but their CEO really wanted to begin to be able to expand the services that they were doing outside of the classroom into a more healthcare setting. So he acquired a company in South Carolina that had a little bit in Georgia, and he approached me and said, "Hey, we would love for you to come and work with us in government relations. Continue doing what you're doing in Georgia. We will support you in that. We will do whatever we need to do. We believe it's right. And also help us in all these other states." And so I accepted that position and made that transition to working for a healthcare company / education company. And it was a really, really exciting. I got to work with incredible people. I learned so much. I learned how to really grow a healthcare business and really bring all the things that I had been utilizing and learning in Georgia and begin to expand those on a national level. And it's interesting because my work with my dad when I was younger and, even out of high school, working for him in, he had at that point 5 or 6 companies. That also gave me this really important skill set in being a hard worker, but also just having this general knowledge of business. And so, I always go back to that and say, had I not been brought up like that, I don't think I could have, even through all the mentoring I went through, I don't think I could have really grown into the position that I had, because that foundation really taught me just general skills on business, whether it was, I did everything from running QuickBooks, payroll, managing, helping employees, helping customers, all kinds of things that he gave me the opportunity to learn that really helped me be able to transition to a leadership role. And I think those things are things that sometimes get missed, and people forget how valuable that type of training really is in the real world.
And that brings us to your current position as the Vice President of Government Relations at Behavioral Health Center of Excellence. Can you tell us a little bit about what is your organization all about, and what is the primary role of yourself in expanding whatever the legislation which you're currently working on?
Yes. So I had been working for, Chance Light for almost 9 years. And I really didn't see myself leaving, but the field of applied behavior analysis, which is the therapy that my daughter received, and is recognized as really the treatment of choice for autism. There has really been such an evolution of moving to ensure that that is a healthcare practice that is paid for no matter what state you live in or what funding you have. And so in an incredible way, that has been done by advocates and parents like myself all throughout the nation. But there is the importance of quality that in some ways has been, I would say, almost forfeited at the expense of access. And so I was approached by the CEO, Sarah Litback, who she herself is such an incredible woman, who has, really built a phenomenal company. And she asked me to come on board to really focus on increasing quality and ensuring that the standards that the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence has developed really are reaching the families. And so I just could not turn that opportunity down. So I joined their team in December of 2020, and I work with providers, with families, with politicians, lobbyists, very similar, same community. But the focus of my work is ensuring that as payers in the healthcare world are looking at autism treatment, that they are ensuring that they are also looking at the quality of that treatment so that children are receiving services that really do provide meaningful impact to their life. So I'm very excited to be in this role. I work on the federal and state level, but I still get to interact with families and providers. So it's very exciting.
And do you have collaborations with other organizations who are in the same field, in the same space, within Georgia or like outside Georgia?
So interesting, the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence is the first accreditation body that developed accreditation and practice standards for the field of applied behavior analysis. So there's not necessarily a comparable organization, but one of our primary missions is collaboration. So we work with organizations that are in our field, and some of them that aren't, just some of them that are healthcare in nature. And our goal is to ensure that as we continue to move and increase accountability, that we're including the community in that. So when we're developing standards, they're not our standards. They are best practice standards from literature, from stakeholders, families, autistic individuals, that everyone is playing a part of this development. Because one of the things that I've seen happen that's really unfortunate is when things are done on an island or things are not done in collaboration. And that goes right for any policy. And that's kind of what we were talking about before, where if you aren't considering the people on the ground that it's affecting, then your policies and your procedures and everything are likely not going to be as meaningful as they should be.
Interesting. So with that, we come into the final segment where you get the opportunity to talk anything about yourself, your organization, or your future aspirations. Like, you said you may be running for office or something. So yes, the platform is all yours. Please take a minute or two to talk anything about you'd like to.
Wow. I think for me, it's interesting. Everyone thinks about America as a place where there's equal opportunity, and it's a great place, and it is. I love where I live, but I think the interesting part to me with having a child that was diagnosed with autism and really entering that space with her was that I realized how broken some things are. And it's okay that things are broken, but I also realized how important it is that, we are involved, that we don't just sit back and say it's broken, but that we have to do something. And that's really where I decided I'm one person, and I tell people this all the time, but one person can make a difference. They really can. And sometimes your difference might be small. It might just be with your own children, or it might be with your colleagues, or maybe it's on a much bigger scale, and it's a difference that could change the trajectory of a whole generation or a whole group of people. But I think that that's the piece where I when I say maybe I would run for office, for me, I'll always want to make sure I'm somewhere that I can make a difference. And I think the most important thing that we all have to do is, when there are things that need changing, how can we meaningfully make that change? How can we make a change where it helps people in real life? So I tell my kids, I have this thing that I tell my kids where I say, it's fine if you share something on social media. That's great. Something you're passionate about. But also you have to do one thing in real life. You have to do one thing. So the thing that you're passionate about, what my kids had this whole thing where they hated the lunchroom food, hated it. And it was honestly like they would take pictures, and it was scary. And I was like, wow, that's terrible. So they're going to put on their social media like nasty and all this. But I'm like, you have to do one thing. So you either have to call a board member, You have to call the USDA office, you have to call your superintendent, or you can go to a board meeting, but you have to do one thing that's real. And that's what I think I would say to people is, it's okay for us to be passionate, but we also have to do something that's tangible to the person or people that the injustice is being done towards. And that's really what I live by. And that's what I hope I keep doing until I'm no longer here. I hope I keep doing real things.
Well, Anna, I can clearly say that you truly are an inspiration for not only your kids, but everyone around you. Thanks so much for sharing all your experiences with me on the podcast. I hope to meet you soon.
Yeah, thank you.